This intro is going to be a mixed bag of topics. It's completely unscripted, so bear with me on that front. Today's show is brought to you by Central, commercial carpenters and supporters of our conversation. Thanks to Central, getting near another year of their support to us. We appreciate that. If you appreciate this show, please let them know that you listen and you appreciate that they support our conversations. First up is Build Health International. If you are a subscriber to the Mass Construction Network, you will have seen Build Health before. You might have heard Jim and Sarah on the podcast as well, but what they do is they do a lot of things, but the reason I'm mentioning them is they reuse a lot of building materials that we're putting in dumpsters currently. So if you're here in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Hampshire, and you have materials that can be reused, so things like doors and frames, there are hospitals which they build in developing nations that don't have access to, in regions that don't have access to good quality healthcare. They build hospitals and other things in those areas. All of their hospitals have been built from reused doors and frames. So if you have doors and frames, if you have cabinets, if you have switch gear, other electrical equipment, they would love to chat with you. And they'll come to your job site and with a box truck and pick it up and reuse it and put it to good use. We had a recent win, which was Stephanie Crepeau from Bond had a lead line door that was going to go in the dumpster. She reached out to Build Health, and we were able to make the connection, and that door is going to get put to good use. So that's exciting. Again, if you're interested, go to massconstruction.org, sign up for the Mass Construction Network. You will get lead time information, code change, new ordinances, things you need to know if you are in the construction market here in Massachusetts, and a fair amount of stuff for folks just nationally. So go ahead and head on over to massconstruction.org and sign up if you're interested in that. Also go to massconstructionshow.com to see the new website for our podcast. Soraya did an excellent job putting that together for us. It came out great. So check that out and see if that's of interest to you. Second topic I'll chat about, mass timber. I've been on the mass timber train for quite some time now, and it's exciting to see more and more projects come on board that are mass timber. A airport is going to open up in Oregon where all the timber was sourced locally. It's a mass timber airport, a wooden airport, which is pretty cool. They have a 9-acre wooden roof. That is exciting for everybody that has been hoping to see mass timber come to life. And just think about the experience of a wooden airport, how nice that's going to feel. So that's pretty exciting. Also on the mass timber front, I recently bumped into Darren Wicks while I was grabbing a coffee. And he works for a company called Synergy now, and they do prefabricated staircases. And he was mentioning that they're starting to bump up against a lot of mass timber projects where they're doing either mass timber stairs or they're doing steel stairs in mass timber buildings. And he was chatting about kind of how you got to work sometimes to get those two materials together. You get the steel and the wood, and they expand at different rates. So that's been a challenge, but it was interesting to hear him saying, oh yeah, we're seeing a lot of mass timber now. We're being asked to put mass timber stairs in, and they're prefabricating them and, shipping them in one piece or in multiple pieces and flying them in place. So I just thought it was unique to see a prefabricated stair company, and that's all they do. Thought it might be interesting to mention to the listeners. Another thing that I kind of enjoyed was we recently put up, all the more reason to follow me on LinkedIn. So go to Joseph Kelly on LinkedIn and you can find what I've been sharing there. And recently I shared a poll, which was a follow-up to the conversation we had with Tyler Grace. And I said, who's most responsible for the lousy user experience with permitting and inspections? I think the amount of people that didn't want to answer was high, but we still had 122 people vote. And, it was 80% felt like it was a municipality's issue. 11% kind of said now this was who's most responsible. So they felt like it was 80 contractor, 11% inspector, 9%. So call it 10% inspector, 10% contractor, 80% municipality. I think that's about right. If you want to, if this was in what I would call the pie format, I think it's around that. Maybe it's, 70, 15, 15, something along those lines. But either way, I felt like that poll worked out to be how I thought it should be. There was also a lot of comments and people providing, how they feel about things and the input. And there's been a lot talking about um, policies that are being put in place and the effect they have on development. So there's been a lot of interesting conversation going on LinkedIn. So if you don't follow, please find me on LinkedIn, Joseph Kelly, consultant at Mass Construction Consultants. You'll see me there. You'll see my face. Connect, follow, whatever you feel comfortable with, and join in. I always like additional data points, and I love hearing different perspectives. The one where I shared some information on a change to the Boston zoning code, it was nice to hear and see, paragraph long comments from people that I'd never met or never heard of. So it's nice getting input from all around. Couple other things to cover before we get cracking. Scott Van Boris, just recorded with him last week. He runs the Contrarian Boston. He's a local reporter. He covers politics, MBTA, but most importantly, he covers real estate and development and government. And a lot of times there's some overlap there. So I did a full sit down with Scott, and that should probably come out next week. And then we will be following up on Scott as he breaks interesting stories that matter in the construction and real estate world. We'll have Scott hop on and talk about that so everyone can stay up to date with the latest news on construction here in Massachusetts. He had a great piece on the BPDA approvals, what was happening year over year there, what was happening year over year permits, things that our listeners would want to know about. So hang tight. You will see Scott pop up in your feed next week. And then today we are going to have Mike Procopio, and he is going to talk about how real estate is a cheat code. So have a listen to what Mike has to say, and then Mike is going to be back for the folks that like him. We're going to go back to those smaller episodes where he's talking about management, real estate, all the mixed bag of topics that Mike and I usually chat about. So without further ado, Michael Procopio. This one is just a wide open highway here. Go where you want with it. I mean, I think you'll have, let me rephrase that. You'll know what this is, but my questions are going to be limited. I'm going to ask you the question, and then I'm going to ask for you to just kind of run with it. Your LinkedIn post, again, pretty close to maybe a tweet, would be, real estate is a master cheat code for financial success. You can create loads of wealth, but on paper lose money and pay minimal taxes. Please elaborate a lot.
What's a cheat code? You have to get to level 10 before you get the cheat code. No.
That is a very enticing statement with very little detail.
Yeah, so I will caveat this by saying this applies to active real estate investors for the most part. So, which I am.
Oh, forget it. I just want passive income.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So we're going to go down that hole too. We could riff on the passive income, knuckleheads. Passive income doesn't exist, by the way. If you think it exists, you're not working hard enough.
My favorite is your brother refers to a lot of these people that talk that way as wannabe Grant Cardones.
Exactly. Guests of the federal penitentiary system. So
I love it.
So why would I say that real estate's a master cheat code for life, really, in a lot of ways?
Oh, he's up in the ante here.
The government has chosen to incentivize real estate for whatever reason, and the owning and developing of real estate. And they incentivize that by allowing us to depreciate the real estate on our taxes. So I'll try not to get too in the weeds here. There's real depreciation and there's paper depreciation, or what the IRS calls depreciation. So real depreciation, when you think about it, is I built a house. That's actually, even though it's an appreciating asset in value over time, your house is getting worth more, it is depreciating in the fact that the siding is rotting and it needs to be painted. It's a depreciating asset, right? You buy a car, it's a depreciating asset. It's worth less every year that you own a car, almost invariably with very few exceptions. You buy a boat, it's a depreciating asset. You buy a plane, it's a depreciating asset. Real estate is unique in that it is actually always an appreciating asset, yet the government considers it a depreciating asset. And what they let you do is take the value of that real estate and write it off on your taxes as if you lost it every year. They have a formula that basically says your real estate, I'm just going to use round numbers, so please nobody correct me on this because there's a lot of nuance on this in the code. So I don't want to take the incoming over 27 years versus 27 and a half, all this nonsense. Forget it, broadly speaking. The government says, listen, your real estate's only going to last 27 years. So you built a building today, in year 27, it's worthless. That's how the government views it. So they say, you bought a building for $27 million today. We're going to let you write off $1 million per year for 27 years on your taxes. And what that really means is you get a $1 million paper loss. Yep. So your building could make money. You can earn money on your taxes, on your paycheck, whatever. And it's all offset by this $1 million fake loss that the government gives you every year, whatever that depreciation is. Now it gets even more crazy because now they say you can have accelerated depreciation. So if you analyze every cost that went into the building, there's different categories, right? So you put boilers in the building. And the government says boiler, and again, I'm making up what this number is. I don't know off the top of my head how boilers depreciate. But they say, all right, you put boilers in the building, boilers depreciate in 10 years. You put technology in the building, technology depreciates in 4 years. You put carpets in the building, that depreciates in 7.5 years. And it's got this huge schedule. And they accelerate all the depreciation to the front end. So you paid $27 million for this building. You do a cost segregation study on it, they call it. And in year one, maybe you get a $5 million loss. And then you can just roll that loss forward on your taxes year after year, and you just keep pecking away at it. So you have these big depreciation losses, they're paper losses. So it looks on your tax return like you lost money. You don't pay taxes. Broadly speaking, there's obviously taxes that you pay on some level, but broadly speaking, you don't pay taxes. This is exactly what was occurring when the whole narrative around, I'm making no political statements here, the whole narrative around Donald Trump doesn't pay taxes. Donald Trump doesn't pay taxes. He hasn't paid taxes in 10 years. No, he hasn't paid taxes in 10 years because he wrote off $900 million on his losses, his paper losses on his casinos in Atlantic City. And for a decade, he's been putting all of his income against the $900 million loss. So he could make $200 million in a year, pay no taxes on it because it's just offset by the $900 million loss. Oh, buy a new building, depreciate it, add to the pot of losses on your taxes. So there's like a little bucket on your tax return form that's just your carried forward losses. Like we track it, like deliberately. Like what are we? It's all about our tax planning, and we'll say, what do we have for carry forwards this year? How much, do we have to really worry about the tax situation? No. So it creates, now that is, again, a huge caveat is that is for active real estate investors. The difference between active and passive, if you're active real estate investor, you can use those losses to offset everything.
And that's and what defines that, and obviously none of this is tax advice, is if you're full-time in the real estate business. If you're full-time a real estate investor. I am a full-time real estate investor. In the construction business, yada, yada, yada. I'm an active real estate participant, an active investor. Yep. If you're passive, which is most investors, it's not as good, but it's still pretty awesome. So if you're let's just use really round numbers, you make $100,000 a year at your day job, and you invest in real estate on the side as a limited partner in whatever, real estate syndications. You're a passive investor. You get those depreciation losses too. You get those paper losses too, but you can only offset gains from the real estate. So what you can't do is say, well, I got depreciation losses, paper losses on my real estate holdings. I'm going to offset the $100,000 in income I made on my salary. You can't do that if you're passive. Or a laundromat or whatever.
Right. Yeah. If you're active real estate, you can. So my losses completely offset my W-2 income, my pay, my salary, my bonus, things like that. Totally offsets it, usually. If you're passive, you're still going to pay taxes on your salary, but what you can do is the income you're making off of the property is offset by the depreciation, typically. So you'll get a lot of times, we're in the situation a lot of times where investors will say, why did I get a K1 that said I had a loss of $10,000? My K1, my tax document says I lost $10,000 last year, but I actually got $30,000 in distributions from the property. We'll say, well, because you actually got $30,000 in income from the property, but on paper, because of depreciation, 40. you got 10 grand in losses. So it creates this really interesting scenario where you're actually creating tons of wealth. Tons and tons of wealth. More billionaires, more self-made billionaires are self-made billionaires from real estate than any other profession. Right? There's a few of them, the big names in there that are from,
Jeff Bezos.
Right. Some technology kind of unicorns. There's a few of those in there. But if you look at all the billionaires, vast majority real estate, vast majority, right? And when you look at the ones that are completely self-made, no inherited money, anything, almost all real estate. So it's an incredible way to build wealth, pay very minimal taxes in that specific arena, and have it look like you're actually taking losses. I mean, that's what they. And look, this isn't gaming the system. This is precisely how the system is set up to function. It is incentivizing people to buy and invest in real estate.
Yeah, and if this was how they set it up to sell fruit, everybody would be selling fruit.
Everybody would be selling fruit. Be in the fruit business.
Yep.
Ironically, we started in the fruit business.
No, sir.
Yeah, my grandfather sold fruit.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, little fruit cart.
Did you get any good pictures?
No.
Oh, that's too bad.
We do have a picture of our first truck, though. Did I ever post that?
I think so.
1950 GMC.
Yeah, I think I've seen it.
Yeah, like in East Boston, wearing suits on the job site. Literally
awesome.
like neckties. Like, guys, what was with the neckties on the job site?
Yeah. A couple of good ones with guys in suspenders, too. Those were
suspenders, neckties. It's like, guys, the hat, you have to wear a fedora. You're banging concrete forms together. We could take the fedora off.
Yeah, it's a different world.
Different world.
Awesome.